right, Dan gave me permission to be a little bit cheeky, so I'm going to tell you a fairy tale. And it's a fairy tale that's all true real. It happens routinely. Brand owner discovers a herd of unicorns, captures all of their tears, ferments those tears in petrified wood vats that magicians built for him, distills it in a solid gold still, hires friend and friend to build an awe-inspiring package which inspires awe. And then they all go out to market. And they think, wow, this is going to be great. This is going to be really easy. This is going to be a downhill run now. I've got amazing liquid. I've got an amazing package. And hey, I won a triple platinum at the Intergalactic Awards for Spirits in Saturn or something. It should be easy, right? And the answer is no. Maybe 10 years ago, but not today. The reality is, I'm going to skip over these first few ones because we covered them in Dan's intro. The reality is that there are a lot of fish in the sea. I'm going to use a metaphor today of marriage as your relationship with your distributor or your importer. A pretty product is not good enough. A great backstory is not good enough. It doesn't matter how pretty it is, how great the liquid it is, how awesome the backstory is. It's not enough. And the thing is that your relationship, the quality of your relationship, the quality of your marriage with your distributors and with your importers has more to do with your success from that point on, from the product creation point on, than anything else. And it's not something you can dictate. It's something that you have to build. So I've got 6 steps of marriage counseling steps for you that we've learned in the course of the last 6 or 7 years. There are 15,000 independent brands out there in the world right now. That's a staggering amount of competition. And when you walk through this room, for those of you who have been here year after year, I imagine that you're seeing that every year the product quality is coming up, the packaging quality is coming up, competition's getting stiffer. And this is just one tiny little slice of the world. 15,000 brands you're out there up against. In our own experience, we seldom go out and seek brands because the target brands that we really desperately want in the portfolio, we tend to already be friends with them, and we tend to already have a relationship with them that we're building, that we're going to make real over the course of a few years. We decline dozens of brands for every bottle that we put into the portfolio. Dozens, sometimes even many, an order of magnitude. For every brand that actually comes in. So your task is to persuade us. How do you make your distributor or your importer excited and passionate about your product in light of all that competition? Point 2, the advice here is that you have to understand that they're now looking for the total package, just like you would be when you're out shopping for a spouse. You don't just want somebody who's, a good time on Fridays, or somebody who is super, super pretty. You want somebody who's pretty and smart and has, really well-balanced emotional state and can guide you through life, on and on and on. It's true. It's real. What you want is the whole package, just like we all do in our lives. And that's what your distributors and importers are now looking for. And because of this vast amount of competition out there, they actually can shop for it now. And they didn't used to be able to because there were slimmer pickings before, but now there's not. How can you do that? How can you assemble the whole package? One is get your full suite of brand tools ready. This is everything from your corporate collateral to your social media to your terms and conditions that you would like to see, to your research from the market. Everything that you can assemble to make their job easier and to make them understand your product, understand where you're coming from, what you're trying to achieve, and give them the tools that they can run with. Second, you need to understand their needs in advance and prepare your terms in advance. Don't just rock up and think that having a beer or a cocktail or a coffee together is, you're going to click and hit it off and it's all going to be perfect. It's not the case. You need to do your research on these brands. And I really loved what Max said about the advantage of your home markets, about knowing all of the important factors in your home market. Well, if you're exporting, if you're going abroad, you're going to have to learn that stuff for each market, and it's not all the same. It is truly completely different depending upon what side of the world you're on and even within regions, within countries, between countries within the region. Third, you got to listen first. Try to be understood second. Try to understand them first. Be flexible and realistic. Be willing to offer value. And so you rocking up with a really beautiful product and a really high EXW and a whole set of expectations about volumes and such isn't going to get you very far in the conversation. You need to understand what their market is like, what they're looking for, what they need. So advice number 3, step number 3, get acquainted with rejection. Get comfortable with rejection. Just like when you're dating, you cannot expect a date to lead immediately to marriage. Most dates go nowhere, as is the case in life with humans, as is the case with spirits and distributors. It is akin to a first date when you meet a distributor or an importer, so be at your very best. Come prepared. Be at your absolute best. Don't get emotional or upset when they say no. Like, it's amazing. All of us get so wound up in our brands and in our professional life. It means so much to us. I'm looking at these 2 legends up here, 5th and 6th generation tequileros. Like, the identity of the brand is so important to the person, and it's true for all of us in this space. But we can't get emotional when a distributor or an importer gives you an answer that you don't like. And the reason is, number 3, you need to leave the door open for a future together that you don't yet know about. It is a remarkably small sector. Globally, none of us are more than 2 degrees removed from anybody else in the space globally. I promise you, all of you in this room can get on WhatsApp or Facebook right now and get to the CEO of practically any spirits company in the business. So we're a very, very small community, even though we're spread around the globe, and you never know how you're going to end up together at a later date. Advice number 4, flirting and dating are one thing, marriage is entirely different. This is about really coming to terms with what kind of marriage you want and being realistic with it. Don't go in blind, we talked about this. Do your research, be objective. Ask yourself if you can collaborate with this distributor, if you can collaborate with this importer, if you can face challenges together, because there will come challenges. There will be acrimony at some point. Forecasts, despite Dan's best work, will not be achieved. Target accounts that are so desired for particular reasons will not be captured. All kinds of things. Production on the supplier end will not happen when it was supposed to happen. So you need to be able to get through those challenges together, just like you would in a marriage. The last point here is the best distributor, and I air quotes, the best distributor may not be the best for you. And we do this all the time where we meet brands and we say, listen, we love you, you think you're really cool, it's a great brand, you're a nice person, but we're just not suited for you. Like, it's just not who we are. You need to find the brand, the importers and distributors that actually connect with who you are and what your brand is. And it doesn't matter what the reputation of the distributor or the importer is if it doesn't fit you. So you need to find the right person for you. Step 5. This is about having the hard conversation right at the outset. Like, don't get married and then have the hard conversations. Like, literally, don't get married and then decide, whether or not you're going to go to church or what school you're going to send your kids to. Have the hard conversation before you get married. And the hard conversation can all be summarized in one spreadsheet, the price build. And so all this conversation that we've been having earlier is all apropos of this. Because if you sit down and you actually work out that price build, market by market, and you figure out where the taxes are coming in and what the margin expectations are for each of the players involved, you will very quickly find out whether or not there's a deal to be had. And you can't figure that out 6 months later after you've perhaps oversold your position, and maybe the distributor even oversold their position. And all of a sudden now there's a margin gap, and somebody has to squeeze a little bit extra. That's a recipe for a bad marriage. There's other details here. A lot of the spirit space in the West really fixates on retail as the benchmark. It's not a benchmark in Asia. It just isn't. There is no retail business out there. So think about what your benchmarks are. When you're thinking of this price build, think about what your benchmarks are for each market, market by market. For us, it's trade pricing, actually, in most of Asia. Really dig into the effect of taxes in each market. People that come from, let's say, the UK or come from the US will have a certain tax model in their head. But when you get to Asia, Hong Kong is ad valorem, and it's 100% of EXW. Singapore is about 20 US dollars per proof liter. Pardon me, 60 US dollars per proof liter, so about 20 US dollars per bottle. So this has this crazy knock-on effects for how your brand gets benchmarked in the market. And you have to work through those details. You can't just come in and say, well, we price against Hendrix, and it doesn't work. You really have to dig into this price build, market by market. Lastly, understand that if you have a contract brand, if you're paying a distiller, you are effectively standing in the middle. That means there's less margin for everybody. So your distributor and importer is going to have a tougher time making your product work. There just isn't enough to go around, and you're going to have to be prepared to counteract that. Lastly, young markets expect bigger margins, and the reason is simple. If you're going into a Western market that's fully developed, you've kind of got that apparatus built, and you can plug into it. Hopefully, you can plug into it successfully. But in frontier markets, your distributor or importer is literally out there building the market. It costs money to build a market, like it really does, and so their margin expectations are greater. Last point, get aligned economically and spiritually up front. Again, this is all about getting your house in order. How are you going to build this marriage? Decide on that up front. Don't decide on it later. First is dig into pricing, credit terms, A&P, territory, exclusivity, information rights, which is reporting that Dan was talking about, forecast, which Dan was talking about. These things, from our perspective, we're actually pretty giving with the information. We're happy to give you the information, depending upon our trust level and depending upon the burden that the brand owner imposes. So if the brand owner wants all that information really regularly and in a unique ad hoc format that doesn't really work for us, it makes it hard for us. And that means we have to staff somebody to sit there and build telemetry for them. And we don't like that. It's inefficient. We'd rather go sell their product. On the other hand, if we have a really good trust relationship, we're likely just open up the doors and just give the information to them. Interestingly, in our space, I'm really happy to report handshakes and contracts both work. It is remarkable how many important brands in important markets are distributed on a handshake. It seems crazy in the modern era. It's one of the things I treasure about this space. I love it about this space. And it's important to remember that it is a small space, and you guys are generally unlikely to sue each other. And even if you do, no one's likely to do business with you afterwards. So handshakes work pretty good in this space. That said, as you get professional, you'll want contracts, your investors will want contracts, etc. Last point, my last bit of advice, don't sell one vision of expectations and deliver another. If you say, we don't have any forecast expectations, back it up. Don't. If you do, say so up front. In other words, don't have this attitude of, I'm going to convince the distributor importer to take my brand, I'm going to romance them and get them to agree, then I'll sort out the details later. No, it's just a recipe for divorce. Sort out that vision and those expectations together right up front. There's my 6 steps, and I'm going to give you one. I'm just going to blast this all up here at once. If you think about it from the distributor's perspective, it's very, very helpful for you to arrange terms that make sense for you, that achieve your goals. But how does the distributor look at it? And I think I really look at it not in terms of wishes and wants, but more in terms of fears and desires. And they have a certain set of desires of a perfect brand, just like we have the idea of a perfect spouse. But they also have a set of fears about what bad looks like. And those are usually born out from real relationships that didn't work so well, just like with all of us in life. What do they desire? Great product, great package, of course. What do they fear? Idiosyncratic, localized packaging of products. It's really hard to sell something that's uber specific to one country in most markets, unless you're tequila or something which is now global. What do they desire? Fair contract terms. I know it sounds silly, but the bigger the brands get, the more bullying they get with their terms. It gets fatiguing for the distributors. They want full collateral sets pre-built. They don't want to have to ask you for images. They don't want to have to ask you for advertisements. They don't have to wait a month while your creative agency cooks up an ad that probably doesn't even work in their local market. They want it pre-built. They want you to understand their market. They want you to know the tax basis. They want you to know what competitor brands are present. They want you to have a sense of what market that you're going into. They want your EXW to be low enough to be sustainable. There has to be enough margin in here for them to make money. If the XW is too high, it's non-competitive. Your forecast will not be realized, and they won't do well with it either. They'd love 90 days of credit from pickup, and the bigger they get, the closer they get to that. What they won't like is prepayment or short terms. Remember, like for instance, for our case, we have almost 5 months between the time we pay our average brand and the time that we collect from our average account. So 5 months where we have that capital extended out there. And so this isn't to say that there's a right answer here that's going to make everyone happy. This is just to say, remember where their working capital position is. They want a brand that provides reasonable A&P. They don't want onerous or no A&P. They want a brand that uses distributors reporting. They don't want a brand that requires custom reporting. They want a brand that listens to them, just like a spouse. They don't want a brand that thinks the brand knows best. They want good relationships with other brands. They don't want your brand to be fighting with another brand, which is remarkable given, you guys know we live in a world of humans, which means we have egos. There are brands that have spats with other brands. This is really not helpful for the distributor. And so on, and so on, and so on. And if you start to look at it this way, you can really package your offering in a way that makes sense and is persuasive for the distributor. And it will make your brand more attractive to them, and they will get behind it. And the last point I will leave you with is, when I think of the brands in our portfolio, again, 40 brand houses, 600 bottlings. When I think of the brands that we're killing it with, they all do the stuff on the left side of the screen, literally. The brands that we're killing it with have organized themselves in a way that works for us, and that just unlocks a whole world of potential for us. And it makes us so much more likely to put our weight behind them. It makes us so much more likely to really organize our efforts to support their brand's growth. And so again, that's a happy marriage. That's really the point of this all.